I'm Christine Persichetti. The Bishop of Brooklyn wants your attention. The diocese is changing and fewer people are going to church. There's a plan to adapt to all of that, but there's no simple solution. In a letter to parishioners, Bishop Robert Brennan outlined both a drastic drop in mass attendance and fewer priests across Brooklyn and Queens. He called for prayers and cooperation while the diocese discusses adjustments to mass schedules and possible parish collaborations. He joins us now to talk more about those changes. Hi, Bishop Brennan.
Hi, Christine. It's good to be on set with you for a
so
change.
Nice to have you here. I know. Nice to see you in person. So let's take a closer look at the numbers you talked about in your letter. In 2022, average mass attendance was reported at more than 124,000 people. That's a nearly 40% drop from 5 years ago when more than 205,000 people attended mass every weekend. So when you first saw those numbers, what were you thinking?
Well, they weren't terribly surprising because it reflects what I've been hearing from the pastors and what I've seen as I've gone around to visit the different parishes. It's also a concern. Part of what we're doing is a continuation of our synod discussions. This is exactly what a lot of our people were talking about during those synod conversations.
All right, and there's a lot of reasons for the drop in church attendance, especially in a big city where there's constant changes in demographics. Let's take a look at more statistics. Last year, there were more than 1.5 million Catholics living in Brooklyn and Queens. That's a more than 16% drop compared to 18 years ago when the diocese reported 1.8 million Catholics. Now we know people leave New York City because of the high cost of living here. Is there anything else you can attribute this loss of Catholics?
Well, I think it's important to mention the number of people who move because part of it is that's the story of Brooklyn, isn't it? Big generations, new people have come in and other people get established and then they go to other parts of the country, very often to Long Island, like my own family, or to Staten Island. But what's happening now is they were often in the past replenished by other people coming in who are Catholic. Many of our neighborhoods now are not only not Catholic, but not Christian. And so you see big demographic changes. You also see people moving about from one place to another. We have some strength in other places. But one of my concerns is that a lot of our people are concerned about housing. That too came up in the synod discussions.
The expense.
The expense. And really, as neighborhoods are being gentrified, what happens is the renters get pushed out. They go further and further away. And so we really do have a crisis here in Brooklyn and in Queens, and a lot of families are struggling. So these things aren't related. Of course, there are other things. Some of the people coming in, like I said, aren't Christian. Some of the people coming in, some of our neighborhoods, especially the so-called gentrified neighborhoods, are really secularists. They're not really practiced. They might even be Catholic, but
nuns.
The nuns, the famous nuns, a whole generation of people who are here for a few years, and then they'll be getting married, settling down somewhere else. But they're here, passing through, and that creates both challenges and opportunities.
I know the diocese is beginning to think of a plan, but in your letter you said there will be some immediate changes to mass schedules. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Well, one of the things that we're asking the parishes to do, and actually that the parishes are eager to, at least the pastors are eager to do, is to work together. So what we want to do is provide opportunities for everyone. So, I'll just use a basic example. Not every parish needs to have an early Sunday morning mass, but somebody does. Not everybody needs to have an early evening, a later evening mass, but somebody does. So how do we set up our mass schedules in such a way that we complement one another? I mentioned the reasons people are leaving the area, but we also know nationally there's a dramatic drop in mass attendance. So we want to try to accommodate mass schedules in such a way that people can avail themselves of masses. One of the good things here in Brooklyn is we're pretty close together.
Yeah.
We are one church.
If there's a 5:30 here, you can go to that mass, or a 9 a.m. there.
And in some of the neighborhoods, the pastors are telling me that's what's happening anyway. So at the simple level, we're looking at just trying to work together with something like mass schedules. That's something we can do now. There are other challenges in pastoral life. It's the mass attendance, but it's also meeting the needs of religious education, the work we do in outreach, the numbers of volunteers we have. And so are there ways that we can collaborate with each other in our religious education program so that we can provide really strong quality programs that meet the needs of the families, and yet have the critical mass we need to do it effectively.
There's also a lot of priest retirements, priest deaths. In recent years, the Vatican released data showing a priest shortage across the world. Is that the case in Brooklyn?
That's absolutely the case in Brooklyn, but I'll say something. There are two parts to that. One is there's an everything shortage.
Yeah.
So we're finding that in the case of high quality, highly formed religious education directors. You know, so that's one of the challenges that parishes are having, is to get people who can run the programs. Catechists, people who are able to teach the children. We have very generous people who've been doing it for a very long time, but we need a new generation to step up.
Their time.
And musicians, everything. So that's another reason for cooperating, that we had to pool our resources. But yes, the number of priests, we are losing a number of priests to death, to retirement. We have very, very good seminarians, but I can tell you how many seminarians we have. That'll be the priests for the next 8 to 10 years. You know, so we certainly want to do more to promote vocations.
Okay, now some parishes are actually doing very well. We were talking a little earlier, Our Lady of Sorrows in Corona. Weekend mass attendance is approaching 10,000, so there is hope.
Oh, sure. You know, I often use the image of erosion at the beach. Sometimes the beach washes away over here, but then it gets extended over there. And what happens is people are continuing to move about, and really some of the new migration, especially among some of the Spanish-speaking populations, countries like Ecuador and Dominican Republic, they're bringing people who are very faithful about going to Mass. And so not just Our Lady of Sorrows, but really that whole Corona, Jackson Heights, Elmhurst area, those parishes, it's not so much that the parishes are doing poorly in one place and well in another, as much as this is where the Catholic population seems to be at its strongest. This is where we have more of our people living very densely, and people who are practicing the faith. So yeah, we have a parish, you mentioned Our Lady of Sorrows, where Mass is all day long, every hour and a half. Packed. And even that, it's exciting, but that's, in a day gone by when you had more land, more priests, and more money, you might be founding another parish. Like in some ways, you're constantly on the move, you're constantly rushing.
All right, finally, Bishop, for the parishioners of the Diocese of Brooklyn who are looking at these troubling numbers, what's your message to them, and how do we get more people back to Mass?
Well, you know, again, we have challenges before us, but there is hope. I mentioned the non-Christian moving in. In some of the parishes where, I'll use the Chinese population as an example, we may have smaller numbers, but we have lots of people coming to the faith. These are parishes where they have 40, 50, 60 baptisms at the Easter Vigil every year. So, you know, it's not the same kind of growth that we've seen. Like, it doesn't make up for a lot of numbers, but you know, in a parish, that's pretty significant. So we have opportunities to share the good news of the faith with people who are anxious to know about Jesus Christ, and we find that happening in some of our areas. We also have great outreach, good things happening with young people. Like, we have a couple of parishes doing some young adult work, but we bring Young Catholic Professionals is opening a chapter here in Brooklyn soon, and hopefully one day in Queens. But we hope to get those things off the ground, and that brings young people who want to live their faith in the midst of their professional life, in the midst of, like, it's part of who they are, and share with other professionals, with each other. We have some of the work going on in various campus ministries, but the work over at Queens College with Focus. So, and we have, again, through that synod experience, we have a lot of people in our parishes who are eager to be inviting other people to come along, to find ways to invite people to experience the fullness of our faith, especially in the Eucharist.
And it's the holiday season, so let's invite them all for
good time.
Christmas, right?
That's
All
right.
right. Bishop of Brooklyn, Robert Brennan, thanks so much for being here.
Thank you very much.
All right, that is our current news update. I'm Christine Persichetti. Thank you for joining us because we are putting your faith in the news. Hope to see you again next time.